Hello, welcome to Prism Technologies. I am Venkat. This is part 116 of ASP.NET video series. In this video, we'll discuss about adding custom events to ASP.NET Composite custom control that we have been working with from parts 112 to 115. If you haven't watched these videos, I strongly recommend to watch them first before proceeding with this video. We have also discussed about adding custom events to user controls in parts 106 to 108. You can watch these videos from the ASP.NET video tutorial at the link that you can find on the slide. Adding custom events to a composite custom control is similar to adding events to user controls. If you know how to add custom events to user controls, then you already know how to do that for composite custom controls as well. There are 5 simple steps to actually add date selected event to the composite custom calendar control that we have been working with. So if you look at this composite custom calendar control, as soon as I select a date from this control, let's say for example I select January 10, 2013, this control should raise this date selected event. And obviously the first step to do that is to create a class, date selected event arguments class, that's going to contain event data. Now I have this class here. So let me copy this class and then let's go back to the custom controls project. So this is the custom controls project. Now I'm going to create this class outside of this custom calendar class, okay, because this is a class by itself and this is going to contain event data. Okay, now this may not be very clear, the purpose of this class at this moment, but don't worry, when we actually consume this event, that's when we will understand better the purpose of this class. But look at the contents of this class. This is a very simple class. All we have is a private variable, a constructor, and a property. Okay, so this is a private variable of type datetime, okay, selected date underscore selected date. And to initialize this private variable, we have a constructor here, date selected event arguments. This is the constructor. Into this constructor we are passing in a parameter of type datetime, again selected date. So we are using this parameter to initialize this private field underscore selected date. And then we have a public property here. The important thing to notice here is that it only has a get accessor, meaning this is a read only property. The users of this class can only read the value of this variable underscore selected date using this property. They can't set the value. Okay, that's our intention behind having only the get accessor. So if they want to initialize this property, they can do that only using the constructor of the class. Okay, so a private field, a constructor to initialize that field, and a public property which returns the value of that private field. A very simple class. And another important point to keep in mind, this class inherits from the event arguments class. Okay, so that's the first step. Later we'll see how we actually use this class. This is a very useful class which is going to contain event data for our date selected event. Okay, so that's the first step. So what's the second step? Create date selected event handler delegate. So let's go ahead and create a delegate. Anytime we are talking about events and delegates go in hand because events are variables of type delegate. So obviously if you have to create an event, there should be an associated delegate. So let's go ahead and create delegate first, and let's call the delegate as date selected event handler delegate. Okay, and delegate is also a type and it can exist by its own, so the delegate need not be present inside another class. So public delegate. And if you remember, when we were discussing about events and delegates in parts 106 to 108, we have spoken about what delegates are, what events are in a very great detail. So if you're new to events and delegates, I strongly recommend to watch these videos from the ASP.NET video tutorial first. Alright, let's go ahead and create a delegate. A delegate will have signature that is similar to a function with a delegate keyword. Now if you remember, the signature of a function will have a return type. Here the function, let's say it's not going to return anything, so it's going to have void return type, and then we are going to call our delegate as date selected event handler delegate. So date selected event handler, and this is going to have 2 parameters, object sender, and then look at this. Now I'm going to make use of this class date selected event args. Okay, so this class is useful for containing the event data. So I'm going to use that class. So date selected event args E. Okay, so if you look at this delegate declaration, it's very simple. It has a void return type and it takes two parameters. One is of type object and the other one is of type date selected event args, the class that we have just created in step 1, and with the delegate keyword in front of it. Okay, so that's our second step. What's the third step? Create date selected event. Now, what is an event? An event is nothing but a variable of type delegate. Now, if I have to create a variable of type, let's say integer, then how do I do that? I simply say int I, for example. Along the same lines, if I have to create an event, then if I have to create a variable of type this delegate, I simply say date selected event handler and then specify a variable. Okay, so what's a delegate? What's an event? An event is nothing but a variable of type delegate. So let's go ahead and create an event. Now remember, the event has to be raised by the custom calendar class. So I'm going to create event inside the class. So I expand this custom calendar class and then let's go ahead and create the event. So an event is a variable of type delegate. So we have created date selected event handler delegate. So my date selected event is going to be a variable of type this delegate, and then if I want that to be an event, all I do is I put an access modifier public and then use the event keyword. So now date selected is the event that is going to be raised by this custom calendar class. So that's our third step. Okay, so what's our fourth step? Create a protected virtual method to raise the event. Again, we have discussed about the significance of using this protected virtual method to actually raise an event rather than raising that directly. Again, we discussed about that in parts 106 to 108. I strongly recommend to watch those videos. Okay, so let's create this protected virtual method, and just to save some time in typing, I have this method already typed. So let me copy that and let's go back to the project custom controls, and within the calendar class, the custom calendar class, I'm going to create this protected virtual method. And look at this, this is very simple. All this method does is it takes in date selected event arguments, a parameter of type date selected event arguments, and what we are doing with that object, look at that, we are checking. So first of all, this is a protected virtual method with a void return type, and I'm calling this as on date selection. Okay, so whenever somebody selects a date, that's when I call this method to actually raise the date selected event. Okay, and date selected event args object is passed in as a parameter. And look at this here, this is very important. We are actually checking if date selected is not equal to null. What is date selected? That's the event. So if the event is not null, then go ahead and raise the event. That's what we are doing here. Now we again discussed the significance of checking null before actually raising the event in parts 106 to 108. Okay, so I'm not going to repeat that here. So it's very important that we check for null before we actually raise the event. And look at this, what is this event? This is nothing but a date selected. What is this? This is a variable of type date selected event handler. And if you look at date selected event handler, it has two parameters. So obviously when you are about to raise that event, you have to pass the arguments for those two parameters. Okay, so if you look at the opening brace, look at this, it expects sender, the object who is raising the event. So who is raising this event? I'm using this keyword, meaning an instance of this custom calendar will actually raise an event. If you remember, in the demo project we're actually using that custom calendar control. Look at this, if I flip that to the source, so custom calendar 1, that's an instance of custom calendar object, class. Okay, so here when we said when we are raising the event, here we said, okay, this for the source parameter here, for the sender parameter, meaning an instance of this class, custom calendar class, is going to raise this date selected event. And what is this E? That's going to contain our event data, date selected event arguments object. So whatever is coming into this method, that is being passed to this event. Okay, in our next step we will actually see how to use this method to raise this event date selected. Okay, so that's our next step. Finally, raise the event when the date selection in the calendar changes. Now, when does the date in the calendar changes? Whenever somebody selects a date. Now remember, whenever we select a date, this is the ASP.NET calendar, but this all put together is our custom calendar. So whenever the selection changed event in the calendar, in the ASP.NET calendar is raised, that's when we want to raise date selected event for this composite custom control. Okay, so let's go back to custom controls and let's look at the code where we have calendar underscore selection changed event. So we have here calendar underscore selection changed. So when will this event be raised? Whenever the selection in the calendar changes. Okay, so at that point of time we want to raise date selected event as well. And look at this, to raise date selected event we can make use of this virtual method that we have just written on date selection. So I'm going to call this method there. Okay, so here, but look at that, if I have to raise the event using onDateSelection method, then I have to pass an object of type dateSelectedEvent arguments. Okay, so first I need to create an instance of that class. So let's go ahead and do that. So dateSelectedEvent arguments, let's say E, or let's call this event data. So I have that event data there, and look at the constructor of this class. This is expecting a date time object to be passed in. So what type of what date time do we pass in here? Look at this, whenever a user selects a date using that calendar, we have the selected date property which gives the selected date. So I'm going to pass the same selected date. Okay, so we have this event data now, event data object. All that is left out is to pass that event data object to this onDate selection method. We are done. So this method is going to raise that event for us. Look at this. The whole purpose of this date selected event arguments class is that. So whenever we are about to raise the event, we need to pass to this onDate selection method the event data. And how do we get the event data? From the calendar object. In the calendar, whenever the end user selects a date, that will be retrieved using selected date property of the calendar, ASP.NET calendar, which in turn is used to create an instance of this date selected event arguments object, and then we are passing that object into this method. And if you look at this method on date selection, what is that doing? That's actually using that object to raise the event. And whoever is going to consume this event, the event handler method, is going to receive this date selected event arguments object, and then we can find out what is the value that is selected by the user very easily. Okay, so that's it. We are pretty much done. So let's go ahead and build this solution. So using these 5 simple steps, we have actually created this custom event date selected. Now let's go ahead and see how to actually consume this event, and that's pretty straightforward. Okay, so we have built the project, and on the status bar you can see build succeeded. Now let's flip to the ASP.NET Web Application project. Now let me first get rid of a version that I have already here. And then I'm going to get rid of this button declaration as well. And then let's go back to code behind file, get rid of the button click event from there. Okay, so on web form and from the toolbox, let's also remove the custom calendar control. So go to the toolbox and then remove custom calendar. Okay, and let's quickly check in the bin folder of the ASP.NET Web Application project. So bin, we should have custom controls assembly there. So let's get rid of that. Let's close that and let's check in the references. remove that from there. Alright, so let's go ahead and add the assembly once again. Choose toolbox items, browse, and we know that the project is in C drive. C, navigate to the custom controls project, custom controls bin, debug, and custom controls.dll. So we have the custom calendar added. All that is left out is to drag and drop that onto the designer surface, which should put an instance of the custom calendar control on this web form. Okay, so we have that registered. ID is custom calendar 1. Let's flip to the designer mode, and we can associate an image with that using image button image URL property. So images / calendar.jpg. That should pick up the image from that folder which we have. And the most important thing, look at this, when I go to the properties and then click on this events icon, you should now see date selected event. Look at that, we have the date selected event. Okay, now when I double click within the text box here, look at that, on that event I have the event handler method automatically generated for us, custom calendar 1 underscore date selected. And look at this, the date selected event arguments object that is now passed in to this event handler method. Now I can use this object to find out what is the date that the user has selected. So that is the significance of having this date selected event arguments class. Okay, so now I simply can say response.write selected date. Remember, this class contains a a selected date property, so we are using that property to actually retrieve the date. That's the whole point in creating this property. And you remember, this constructor is used to initialize this private field when we were actually creating an instance of that object in the custom controls. Where did we use that constructor? Right here, the constructor that takes in date time. Alright, so I'm going to use the selected date and I'm going to convert that to short date string. So that's the selected date. Okay, so when will this method be called? This method will be called whenever date selected event is raised. And look at this, let's go back to the designer. So when I double click this, what actually happened behind the scenes within the source? Look at that, on date selected, when this event is fired, this event handler method will be called. Just like when you have a button, on click, button1 underscore click event handler method will be called. Okay, similar to that, whenever date selected event is raised, this event handler method will be called. So let's go ahead and run this, and as soon as I click as soon as I select the date from the calendar, the event will be raised, the event handler method will handle that, and it should print out the selected date. So I am selecting 17th. Look at that, as soon as I select the date, it's going to print that for me. Okay, so whenever the selection changes, the event gets raised, and that event is actually consumed by this event handler method that you can see, custom calendar 1 underscore date selected. And within that event handler method, we are using the object date selected event arguments object that contains the event data, and we are printing that on the web form by converting it to short date string. So 5 simple steps to create custom event. It's very much similar to how we do it for user control. So if you know that, then it's pretty much straightforward. In our next video, we'll actually discuss about assigning an image. Look at this. At the moment, if you look at this custom calendar control, it doesn't have an image associated with it in the toolbox. If you look at that, it has a very generic image there. Instead of that, we can actually associate our own image. We'll discuss about how to do that in our next video session. On this slide, you can find resources for ASP.NET, C# and SQL Server interview questions. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.